Well, okay. Well, good morning, everybody. I'm coming at you from inside this soapberry thicket here. As you can see, we get pretty uniform dispersal, and the birds seem to be having a good morning too. So, if you guys are new to plants, you might wonder why people who are talking about plants, or maybe if you're reading it in books, they refer to plants in names like Sapindus saponaria. That's right. The thicket that I'm in right now it's a thicket of plants that are they're that species, right? And it could be that they're trying to sound smart or arrogant, and I know a lot of people think that the use of these names can come off that way, but more likely the case is that that's just how they know they're plants, because it's an effective way to communicate the plants that you're referring to. And it's best practice to use what's called binomial nomenclature, right? The system that we have of naming plants, because it's agreed upon, and it can eliminate a lot of confusion that comes with using common names. Bird people are a little bit more disciplined. Their common names are regulated, and they're a lot more easily communicated. When you say, American robin, you know that this bird here is the bird that I'm referring to. But with plants, that's not always the case. So today I'm going to make that argument that for communication purposes, common names of plants are in effect meaningless. So let's get into it. I'm not far from the lake right now, and we're gonna take a walk and see what we can see on our way to the dirt hill behind me. So let's see what we can find today. So here we've got last year's remnants of a plant. That's a really good example of how descriptive a scientific name, a binomial, can be. This is a common yarrow, Achillea millefolium, in the Asteraceae plant family. Now, this genus name, Achillea, tells me, because I know Achillea is in the Asteraceae, that it's in the composite plant family, right? The Asteraceae plant family. And I can also deduce that from looking at this head of flowers here. But the specific epithet tells me, millefolium, tells me about its leaves. So we see here, these are its leaves. They're just starting to come on this year. And then it'll send up another flowering stalk as we go into the spring and summer. But you see these leaves have a lot of lobes, and they're sort of, it looks as though they're, they've got all these different leaves coming out. This is one leaf here, but it's what we call bipinnately compound, meaning that it has it's lobed many times on itself, giving it the appearance of having many, many, many leaves. Hence the name millefolium. That's what it translates to in Latin. Okay, so right here we've got a plant that has a pretty good example of a good binomial name, a good scientific name. These are the fruits of a plant called Solanum elaeagnifolium. Now, Solanum tells me that this plant is in the Solanaceae plant family. So even if I didn't know this plant, I'd never seen it at all, and I saw this name, Solanum elaeagnifolium, I would know right away that this is in the Solanaceae plant family. And that's in part because the genus Solanum is the type genus for the family, meaning that it bears the family name, right? Solanaceae is the family, the nightshade family that we're talking about. And then the epithet elaeagnifolium refers to these leaves that look like the plant Elaeagnus, right? The common garden hedge or shrub, Elaeagnus. So that's where we just came out of this line of trees here. A lot of salt cedar, but even now I can still see, some black willows coming up, those taller trees there in the background. But word of warning, if you go out into the cut, if you're diving into the bush and you bring a beverage with you, make sure that it's got a lid, otherwise you end up ingesting plant material of unknown origin. But let's see what we can see up at the top of this hill, and hopefully there might be a plant or two in bloom. So here I am, hanging out on the north side of the dirt hill, a little bit out of the wind. It's turned out to be a beautiful day to talk about binomial nomenclature for plants. And when I talk about these things, and when I talk about how these names can communicate relationships between plants, it's important to know what a family is. So when we talk about a family of plants, we're talking about a group of plants that are considered to be related to one another phylogenetically, or just their genes are similar. So like your own family, you are more similar to your brothers and sisters than to your cousins, than to your neighbor, right? So we delineate plants this way as well, and we do that through the use of families. And then, a subclassification of a family is what's called a genus, and plural genera. And so when we talk about a family is comprised up of many different species of plants that fall into different genera, usually within that family. When we talk about a binomial, we have, the genus name followed by a specific epithet. And the combination of these two words are unique to a species. So no species is ever going to share its binomial name with another plant. Unlike, for example, common names, where we'll have something like blazing star as a common name. Blazing star not only refers to many individuals within the genus Liatris, which is in the Asteraceae plant family, and also many individuals within the genus Mencelia, which is in the Loazaceae plant family. But they're not even related, right? So these two plants that share a common name of blazing star aren't closely related at all. So whenever you're talking to somebody and you say, "Oh, did you see this blazing star?" Right? It's completely it's useless, right? It's ineffective, and it leads to a lot of confusion and a lot of frustration for people who are trying to communicate about a lot of plants very quickly. And so that's why these binomial names are so critical in any kind of botanical communication, is because they cut through all of the disorder and all of the chaos of common names and just get right to the identity of a plant. And even though it sounds a little bit intimidating, it's extremely useful and critical. And if you start by learning scientific names, before you really get too attached to common names, it can be a lot more beneficial for you. Some of the cons of binomial nomenclature: it's intimidating to people to learn because it seems foreign. But once you get into it, it's really not that hard. And if you use it around your friends, they might think that you're stuck up. But I think that's their problem, personally. And pros and cons of common names. So pros of common names: some people just like them. It's really just a matter of if you're attached to them or not. And like I said, it's easier when you're getting started not to get attached to the common name, because they can be misleading and they can be just more things to memorize. So when I started out, I never really bothered learning the common names, and I realized when I wanted to communicate with people, they didn't care about a binomial name. Want to have scientific names to make sure that other people know what you're talking about.